On December 2nd, 1804, inside the ancient hallowed halls of Notre-Dame Cathedral, an act of breathtaking audacity was about to unfold. Pope Pius VII, head of the Catholic Church, sat ready to perform the sacred thousand-year-old ritual of crowning a monarch. But in a move that would stun Europe, Napoleon Bonaparte, a man forged in the fire of revolution, took the crown and placed it on his own head. This moment has gone down in history as the ultimate display of ego-pure, unadulterated hubris. But that's not the whole story. This wasn't a spontaneous act of arrogance. It was a carefully calculated, brilliant piece of political theater designed to save his government, create a new dynasty, and send an undeniable message of power to the world. So, why did he do it? To understand this moment, we have to look at the world Napoleon inhabited, a world of chaos, fear, and a desperate hunger for stability. A republic on the brink. To really get why that December day was so important, we have to rewind. The France of the late 1790s was a nation on a knife's edge. The French Revolution had consumed its own, sending a king, a queen, and countless others to the guillotine. After the Reign of Terror came the Directory, a government so corrupt and incompetent it left France weak, divided, and vulnerable. The French people were exhausted by a decade of turmoil, civil war, and economic collapse. They didn't just want order, they craved it. Into this power vacuum stepped Napoleon Bonaparte. With the coup of 18 Brumaire in 1799, Napoleon seized power and established a new government, the Consulate. As first consul, he cast himself as the savior of the Republic, a leader who could deliver peace while preserving the revolution's core ideals. And for a while, he did just that. He ended the civil war in the Vendée, reformed the economy, and established the Napoleonic Code, a legal framework that guaranteed equality before the law. France, it seemed, could finally breathe again. But this stability was incredibly fragile. It all depended on the life of one man. Napoleon wasn't a king born to rule. He was a general who had taken power. His legitimacy came from his success, and his life was under constant threat. Royalists who wanted to bring back the Bourbon monarchy and radical Jacobin who felt he'd betrayed the revolution both saw his death as their path to victory. The plots came one after another. In October 1800, there was the Dagger Plot, a conspiracy to stab him to death at the Paris Opera. It was foiled, but it was a chilling reminder of how vulnerable he was. Far more serious was the plot of the Rue Saint-Nicolas on Christmas Eve of that same year. As Napoleon's carriage raced toward the opera, a massive bomb barrel packed with gunpowder and shrapnel detonated. This infernal machine exploded just seconds after his carriage passed. Napoleon and his wife Josephine were unhurt, but the blast killed and wounded dozens of innocent bystanders. The carnage drove home a terrifying truth. The peace of the nation was just one assassin's lucky shot away from total collapse. These weren't isolated incidents. For years, royalist conspiracies, often funded by Great Britain, aimed to eliminate Napoleon. The most critical of these was the Cathedral Plot of 1804. Led by Georges Cadoudal, the plan was to kidnap and assassinate the first consul to clear the way for a Bourbon restoration. The plot was uncovered, but during the investigation, a name surfaced that sent shockwaves through the government: the Duc d'Enghien. The Duke was a Bourbon prince living just across the border in Germany who had fought against France. Convinced on very flimsy evidence that the Duke was the prince the plotters were waiting for, Napoleon made a ruthless decision. He ordered a secret raid into foreign territory. On March 15th, 1804, French soldiers crossed the Rhine, abducted the Duke, and brought him back to Paris. He was put through a sham military trial, found guilty of treason, and executed by firing squad next to a pre-dug grave. The execution sent a brutal message. No one was beyond Napoleon's reach, but it also sparked international outrage. More importantly, The plot revealed the fundamental weakness of his regime. As long as he was just the first consul, his power was personal. If he died, the floodgates of revolution and civil war would open all over again. His top advisors, like Talleyrand and Foch, hammered this point home. The system wasn't secure. The only way to truly protect the future was to make his power permanent and hereditary. The problem was clear. The Republic was unstable because its leader was mortal. The solution, therefore, had to be immortal. Forging an empire, making France a hereditary empire, was the ultimate fix for the problem of stability. If Napoleon had an heir, killing him would be pointless. The assassin would only enthrone his successor, not destroy the regime. A dynasty meant continuity. It would turn a temporary military dictatorship into a permanent fixture. This was the argument presented to the French people. On May 18, 1804, the French Senate formally proposed that the government of the Republic be entrusted to a hereditary emperor. The title of king was carefully avoided. It was too tied to the hated old monarchy. Emperor, on the other hand, sounded grander and more powerful. It evoked the glory of ancient Rome and the legacy of Charlemagne, the great unifier of Europe whom Napoleon admired. To make it official, a referendum was held. The French people were asked if they approved of a hereditary empire. The results were officially a landslide: 3,572,329 in favor and only 2,569 against. Of course, the vote was heavily managed, and with open registers, dissenting wasn't easy. But it gave Napoleon the veneer of popular support he needed. He could now claim he was emperor not by the grace of God, but by the will of the French people. With the legal groundwork laid, all that was left was the ceremony. It couldn't be a simple inauguration. It had to be a spectacle so magnificent it would awe France and send a message to the rest of Europe. Every single detail was planned for symbolic effect, and at the heart of it all was the moment Napoleon would crown himself. The symbolism of the crown. The coronation on December 2, 1804, was a masterpiece of propaganda, a blend of Roman, Carolingian, and revolutionary traditions fused into something new. To understand why Napoleon crowned himself, we have to unpack the meaning behind the gesture. First, it was a declaration of dominance over the Church. For 1,000 years, European monarchs derived their legitimacy from God, with the Pope as his representative on earth. A pope crowning a king symbolized that power was a divine gift from the Church. Napoleon understood this tradition, which is why he insisted Pope Pius VII travel from Rome to Paris for the ceremony, a huge display of Napoleon's influence in itself. Having the Pope present gave the event an air of religious sanctity, which was important for reassuring Catholic France. But Napoleon, a product of an anti-clerical revolution, had no intention of submitting to the Pope. After being anointed with holy oil, Napoleon walked to the altar, took the crown, a new creation modeled after Charlemagne's, since the French royal regalia had been destroyed during the Revolution, and placed it on his own head. This wasn't a spontaneous snatch, as popular legend claims. It was prearranged with the Pope. The message, however, was just as powerful. By crowning himself, Napoleon declared that his authority was his own. It came from his achievements and the will of the people. The Pope was a witness, not the source of power. Napoleon was the source of his own legitimacy. He then crowned his wife, Josephine, reinforcing that her rank came from his authority, not the Church's. Second, the coronation created a new kind of monarchy. His title was Emperor of the French, not King of France. The old title implied the king owned the country. The new one suggested he was the leader of the people, governing with their consent. The ceremony was held not in Reims, the traditional site for coronations, but in Notre-Dame in Paris, the heart of the Revolution. He also chose new symbols. Instead of the Bourbon fleur-de-lis, he used the eagle of Roman legions and the bee, a symbol of industry from an ancient Frankish tomb. A few days later, on December 5th, the Army's new standards, topped with golden eagles, were distributed in a grand ceremony. Every detail was designed to build a new imperial identity that blended ancient glory with revolutionary ideas. Finally, the self-coronation was a direct message to the other monarchies of Europe. In their rigid hierarchy, a republican leader was an inferior. By making himself an emperor, Napoleon elevated his status to the equal of the Habsburg Emperor in Austria and the Tsar of Russia. His self-coronation was a direct challenge to their claims of legitimacy from God and bloodline. He was showing that a new kind of power existed, one based on merit and popular will. He was an upstart, and he embraced it. The crowned heads of Europe were horrified. They saw him not as a fellow monarch, but as a revolutionary in a crown. This act was a key factor in the formation of the Third Coalition against France the following year, setting the stage for another decade of war. The coronation was Napoleon throwing down the gauntlet to the old order of Europe. The image of Napoleon crowning himself has become an enduring symbol of his legendary ego. And while his ambition was massive, seeing this as mere vanity is to miss the point. It was a brilliant, multi-layered solution to very real problems. It solved the problem of stability. By creating a hereditary empire, Napoleon ensured a clear line of succession, making his assassination futile. The crown was a shield against the daggers and bombs of his enemies. It solved the problem of legitimacy. As a general who took power in a coup, he needed a foundation for his rule that went beyond the battlefield. The coronation, combining religious sanction from the Pope and popular sanction from the referendum, provided it. But by placing the crown on his own head, he declared that his ultimate authority came from himself. And finally, it solved the problem of status. Napoleon refused to be seen as a temporary leader, inferior to Europe's hereditary monarchs. The coronation announced that a new power had arrived, one that was the equal of the ancient thrones of the Habsburgs and Romanovs. Napoleon's self-coronation wasn't a beginning, but a culmination. It was the final act in his transformation from general to sovereign, the formal end of the French Republic, and the dramatic curtain raiser for the Napoleonic Empire. It was the moment Napoleon Bonaparte stopped just shaping history and became a historical institution. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Napoleon's rise to power, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories from history. Click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Let us know in the comments, do you see Napoleon's self-coronation as an act of genius or an act of pure ego? We'd love to hear what you think. Until next time.